This is Gail Morgan welcoming you to the Libertarian Counterpoint. Now, your host, James Just.
And welcome this evening. With me is Mr. Richard Fields. Thank you for joining us today, Richard. And Mr. John Cameron, as usual. Thanks for joining us, John. Gentlemen, there seems to be a uprising of sorts. There's a couple different ways. First, before I get to the uprising, actually, I skipped ahead of myself. We want to talk about California's budget deficit because just the other day it was revealed that the budget deficit is even worse. It's, what is it, 75 billion now, 78 billion, something like that?
Oh, who's the billion here, a billion there? I mean,
65 billion or something. Yeah.
As Eb Durham said, a billion here, a billion there. Pretty soon you lose track or something.
Or pretty soon it adds up to real money.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. When are these people going to actually start being honest with us?
Yeah.
I mean, well, no, I think that Newsom, he wants to be president. I think he's showing his credentials in the most positive way possible, because what better credentials are there to go to Washington and be president than show that you can throw away money with abandon? And he's doing it here.
And I agree with that. Nobody except for the upcoming third party that hopefully will break the back of the duopoly is even talking about balancing the budget. We need to stop giving rich people, $5,000 a month in Social Security and all the rest of that. But this $78 billion is after the $20 billion the federal government slipped the state of California as a gift, just to make sure they keep electing progressives. So it would be near 100 billion without that. I mean, it's crazy. It's, it's the tribe. Nobody associates their vote with what's happening as far as these huge budget deficits and these insane programs. I mean, we're got these deficits and we're just throwing money away left and right. We still got the high-speed rail thing going. Well, we're on the hook for that for like $200 billion, and people voted to stop it. So,
and it's moving very quickly, don't you know?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's why they call it high-speed rail.
The slowest high-speed rail. And the thing is, they're just still wanting to spend money after new program on new program. It's like they didn't get the memo that we're in serious debt. But these legislatures are still producing more money, more programs that cost more long-term money that we don't have. And their solution is, we'll tax somebody else. Somebody else is going to pay for it. There's nobody else to pay for it. We're running out of people to pay for it.
Our great grandchildren? Yeah.
Will they even be here, or will they have moved to Florida? Texas,
well, they won't be able to read. They'll have to walk everywhere, and they'll be hopefully farming their little plots in the back, their allotments. But they're going to pay off that big tax bill. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my hope is that it gets bad enough, or doesn't get bad enough, depending upon how your view is, that someone like Javier Milei makes sense here in California and the United States. I mean, is it going to have to get that bad before someone actually can come through here and cut half the bureaucracy just because it needs to be cut?
Maybe I'm an optimist, but I think, I talk to people, hang out in coffee houses and, East Sac, which is, rich folks, and then in Midtown, and nobody trust the government except for the hardcore stupids who are in the trough. I mean, nobody that works for the government believes what the government says. Nobody in quote unquote state service. The very few people are actually buying it, except for the elites that are running the media. I mean, what did Milei call them? The parasites. Nobody else believes anything the politicians are saying. So, in one way, the pandemic did a good thing, because it made nobody believe anything. And eventually, we're going to come full circle back to what our founders wanted, which was less government. Hopefully, it comes before the revolution, because after the revolution, the Gestapo is just going to tighten things down. But I think there's going to be change. I really do. I just don't know when. Maybe call me a crazy optimist. I don't know. Call me. I don't care.
Well, change will come after enough pain has happened, right? And I think that's starting to happen in Europe. Some of these cracks are starting to show.
Yes.
Because Brexit, after Brexit was what, 7, 8, almost a decade ago now. Now, the Brussels elites are terrified because it's starting to spread. The Brexit infestation, or whatever you want to call it, is starting to spread. People are starting to realize that the EU is a bureaucratic state. It's essentially an authoritarian bureaucratic state. And
California, only in Europe.
Well, it's interesting what's going on in Europe. John, you mentioned the optimistic solution to our troubles, which is an American-style revolution. But the danger is a French-style revolution. And speaking of France and Germany and Spain and just about Holland, just about every other European country, the farmers are up in arms. They're literally spreading manure on the doorsteps of Capitol buildings all over the continent. And they have a lot of legitimate grievances and a few illegitimate grievances. The illegitimate grievances, just to get them out of the way, they don't want their protectionism to end. They don't want cheap wine. French don't want cheap wine imports from Portugal.
Sorry about that.
And they're looking for protection. The farmers are. But on the other hand, they're saying all of the micromanaging, all of the just nitpicking by the European Union on how much fertilizer they spread on each square inch of ground, whether or not their chickens are free range or whatever. I mean, that kind of nitpicking regulation is the other thing that they're complaining about. And complaining they are. You're not seeing it on NBC, CBS, ABC, New York Times, Washington Post, etc., or even the European newspapers. Where you are seeing it is on the only relatively uncensored media that exists today, and I'm talking, of course, about X, formerly Twitter.
Yeah. And what you're seeing, the exact same things that they're talking about and complaining about the farmers are what farmers in California have had to put up with for years. So basically, the European Union is the European version of California. They've got the massive bureaucracies that micromanage everything. And Millet talked about that. He said, you don't have to have classic socialism for the government to basically own everything, because if they run everything, it's in essence ownership. And that's what's going on in Europe, and it's what's going on in California. And it's been the farmers and the people in the cities and towns have been rebelling against the Eurozone since it started, because, they, like the French, they want to have their pâté. They don't want to put dates on eggs, like it calls for in every single egg has to have a date on it in Europe. Just on and on and on. They want their unfiltered wine. They want their raw milk. They don't want to have to make bread according to what Belgium says. And so they're facing exactly what farmers and store owners and shopkeepers in California are facing, except for the fact that they don't have nearly as much crime as we do. So, yeah.
And what our viewers will have seen is that the rise of the far right in Europe, right? They will have heard about that. But what they won't talk about is that's a response to the rise of the far left, right? It's every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So the farther left you push, the more incentive you give for the far right to reemerge.
Well, looking at that, it's the horseshoe theory of politics. When you get right down to it, the far left and the far right are essentially the same. The only thing that changes is certain parts of the rhetoric, whether they worship Marx or worship Hitler. I mean, they're both socialists.
Well, it's both sides want to impose
yeah.
their morality on the other side, right? On everybody else. That's kind of what it boils down to, right?
Well, and here I want to go back to the horseshoe that Richard brought up, because it's a wonderful concept. And here we have, a big crowbar in our economy is the environmental regulation that we're having and the force feeding electric cars and windmills and all the rest of this, and cutting out natural gas and nuclear power plants instead of putting them in. And so we have the religious right who want to control everybody's uterus and have moral sway over the bedroom. And we have the religious left, but their religion is ecology. You know, there's something like 53% of people under the age of 30 think the world's going to end in 5 years because of global warming. It's insane. And there is no science justifying that. It's the religion of ecology. So that's another horseshoe that's going on.
Yeah, it's mandating different types of morality. And speaking of mandating morality, Richard, you have something to say about mandating environmental morality, do you not?
Yeah, and as a man outstanding in my fields, I need to get into character here, and you know, and do my little commentary, which is report from the fields. The United States has legislated that 50% of all new passenger cars and light trucks be electric or hybrid by 2030. That's 6 years from now. Keep that number 6 in mind. Other countries have similarly ambitious plans for electrifying surface transportation as well. The International Energy Association estimates that absent revolutionary improvements in battery technology, the world will need to do a little bit more mining to accomplish those goals. By 2030, the world will need 50 new lithium mines, 60 new nickel mines, 17 new cobalt mines. Copper, rare earths, and other materials that need to be mined will add another 261 new mines. Altogether, that adds up to 388 new mines. That's more than double the number of existing mines in the US and Canada today. But propose a specific location for a new mine and watch the NIMBYs and environmentalists come out of the woodwork to stop that mine and related refinery construction. Environmental barriers and regulatory uncertainty, not to mention financing, lead time, and construction time, mean a new mine can take up to 18 years from proposal to production. And the clueless politicians expect them to be ready to go in 6 years? Ain't going to happen. The other thing that is happening is that car buyers are becoming increasingly skeptical about the relative value of electric cars versus internal combustion, ICE-powered vehicles. They don't go as far and take longer to charge in cold weather. And despite the global warming fears that are driving the Electrify Now legislation, we still have cold weather, a lot of it. Cars are piling up on dealer lots. Responding to a lack of demand, Mercedes-Benz is delaying its electric vehicle goals by 5 years. Ford has slashed the price of its Mustang Mach-E's. Tesla is reducing the price on its Model Y. Hertz is selling off 20,000 electrics in its rental fleet and not replacing them. Ads for electric cars are even disappearing from the Super Bowl game for the first time. What is going to happen? It's a good guess that car companies required by law to sell a certain percentage of electrics will be incentivized to substantially increase the prices for the ICE cars they can sell. That or rationing ICE cars will be the only way they can maintain the legally mandated ratios. So your new ICE vehicle will cost a lot more, or you'll keep driving the old, usually less fuel-efficient car you already have. It's not nice to mess with Mother Nature, and messing with markets, telling consumers what they can or cannot buy, usually does not work out very well either.
Okay.
Our current crop of politicians has managed to do both. Maybe it's time to plant a new crop. I'm Richard Fields with Report from the Fields. See you again next week.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Richard.
Well done.
Yeah,
Thank you.
when you mandate morality, especially in farming, what you end up with, history has proven this, is starvation. It's just what happens. And regardless of your perceived moral solutions or your perceived problems, it always ends up with the same thing when you have non-farmers deciding what farmers should be farming.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the best example of that is the Soviet Union and Communist China, which collectivized the farms in the Soviet Union and killed up to, estimates vary, somewhere around 100 million people through starvation. Compare that to the Holocaust of the Jews in Germany, which was 6 million. And nobody is excusing Hitler or the Nazis, but the communists, through trying to do good under their lights, did worse than all of the fascist governments historically in the world.
The path to hell is good intentions, right?
You have more modern examples that are the same thing. You have what they used to call Rhodesia, was the breadbasket of Africa, with the highest standard of living on the continent. And then when they came in as quote unquote socialists, it was I think, Richard, you still got your trillion Zimbabwe dollar.
Yeah, I've got no, it's quadrillion. It's several hundred quadrillion dollars. Yeah. Well, it's not hanging on my refrigerator anymore. I think I moved it to the bathroom to use what you use paper for in the bathroom.
Oh, cool. All right. Yeah. And so every single time this has been tried everywhere, it's failed. Yet, and the reason it keeps being tried is that people who can't compete in markets compete through legislation. They buy carve outs and favoritism and monopolies by giving donations to certain politics through flat out bribes or campaign contributions. And politicians couldn't compete in an open market because if you're in business, you actually have to deliver on your promises or somebody goes to the other store. So they're going to keep trying this craziness, and it's going to keep failing, and eventually lessons will be learned. It's going to take a while because it's being taught in schools as if it does work. I think, again, back to the Gen Z and Gen Y people, over 50% of people under the age of 35, I believe, have a favorable view of communism. So how did they get that if they studied the reality of history rather than propaganda of history?
Yeah. Well, we've been talking about morality, and so there's a different type of failure of morality, I suppose, is the Russian collusion has been proven to now be a hoax. And the real problem with that is now, how are these institutions, these public institutions, the mainstream journalism, news gathering organizations, whatever you want to call it, how are they ever going to regain public trust after they've been proven to be liars? I mean,
well, that's not a bad thing. Getting a less trust for the legacy media is probably a good thing. But that being said, the bad thing about the whole Russian hoax is this: it will get Trump reelected. And Trump was a lousy president. He ran up more debt than any other president preceding him. And he destroyed world trade in one fell sweep in 3 or 4 years. He's a nasty guy and a terrible president. He'll get reelected because he was conspired against by a bunch of leftist media types and with politicians with the willing collision of the media. It was
not only that, but
from the beginning, and the worst nightmare of those trying to conspire against him is coming true or will come true.
Yeah, and the collusion, basically, finally the truth has come out on it. That was it Brennan who was running the CIA then looked at the stuff and spun it the other way. The Russians were actually favoring Clinton.
Yeah,
and not that they had any.
Nothing makes any difference, but whatever.
Yeah, well, not that they had any effect on the election, but he basically spun it to say that.
Yeah, I mean, now Putin has endorsed Biden. So what?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great endorsement. I think that'll get him some votes because, I mean, what the heck? But the idea that that any of these people, the cacistocracy, is that the word for government by idiots? We've got pathocracy, we have cacistocracy. These people are stupid. I mean, if you have conversations with these, they're shrewd and they get away with stuff.
Yeah, I think kleptocracy is the right word, because what you have is a bunch of people who are feathering their own nests by controlling the reign of power and pushing the bill down the road, and after which they're out of office and have packed away their ill-gotten gains and have decamped and left the country.
Yeah,
John, I think the word you're looking for is idiocracy, and they made a movie about that, and I just want to point that out.
No, I absolutely agree. It's the idea that who said, Richard, you're good on these kind of quotes. Who said that people get the politicians they deserve, or they get the government they deserve?
H.L. Mencken.
Yeah,
good and hard.
Good and hard.
In a democracy, the public gets the politicians they deserve good and hard.
Well, speaking about getting the politicians, we're going to move on because I want to get some of these topics in. Americans voicing COVID concerns, should they get an apology? For those people like us who sat there 4 years ago and said, I'm not sure some of these policies are healthy long-term for the individuals or the community at large, and people, poo-pooed us at best, right?
Well, here's the thing. I think it's important to say that the myocarditis and pericarditis and all of the other side effects of the COVID, not really a vaccine, are very, very rare. They're, in the millions, less than one in some number of millions. That doesn't mean they don't exist.
I disagree with you in a minute.
That doesn't mean they don't exist. They do exist. And we were told they did not. We were lied to. So that's where the apology comes in. And the other thing that we need to remember is that for a healthy 20-something or 30-something, the risk of the vaccine was higher than the risk of getting COVID and living through it.
And I'm still not convinced that the numbers are anywhere near accurate because of in the UK, for example, I watch a wonderful guy, Dr. John Campbell. He's actually a PhD in nursing, who has a YouTube that I'm surprised isn't shot down, other than the fact that he just does peer-reviewed reporting of statistics. The excess deaths numbers are now being monkeyed with in the UK. And there's still a huge number of excess deaths that are not related to COVID.
That's a different thing. That's a different thing. Excess deaths are related to the fact that people died of other stuff because they couldn't get good medical care because the economy.
I'm not talking about then. I'm talking about now.
Oh, okay.
So this is after. Yes, it was high then, but it's still high, and you're not having people die from COVID, and you're having people go. Maybe that is the long tail of the missed cancer treatments and stroke treatments and heart attack treatments and all the rest of that. But there's no good explanation about the excess deaths, and I can tell that James wants to move on to something else.
Yes, yeah. It's one of the things I do want to say is that we historically, at least here in the United States, have done a terrible job about tracking vaccine injuries. We just do a terrible job.
Why would we? It just makes us look bad. It makes the
So any of these numbers are kind of suspect, but the reality is we were lied to regardless, and I think that's the important part. But speaking about lies. The extradition of Julian Assange threatens press freedom, which we've talked about this thing to kind of death, but at least the New York Times is actually what brought this out. This was an article
that is mind-blowing.
In the New York Times.
Yeah.
That's the difference between this one. Finally, someone at the New York Times says, "Hey, wait a minute. Maybe we shouldn't be prosecuting people for doing what we do."
It's really interesting that the ox has to be gored directly before they show any interest. And I think that's what's happening. Finally, ownership, at least at the New York Times, is saying, "Hey, wait a minute! If they get Assange on the Espionage Act, we're all toast." Whenever a government that doesn't like us happens to get into power, and with Trump about to win election again, those in power would be people that would not like the New York Times. And Trump is just as big a persecutor of Assange as Biden is, if not worse. So reporters of all stripes are in big trouble if they can't do good investigative reporting, and that's what Assange was doing. Now, was Assange a good guy all the way around? Probably not. Not really material. Not really material. What they're going after him for was reporting the truth.
Well, they're basically, the Pentagon Papers. That you got the Pulitzer Prize in reporting for people revealing secret information because they worked for a big city paper at the time, when big city papers run everything, and you've got somebody doing the same thing, fixing to go to prison for 175 years for reporting the modern version of the Pentagon Papers. So it is worrisome, and it's not just Assange. The Post, which used to be an exemplar of investigative journalism, fired a reporter who was going after the truth in the whole Biden crime family thing.
That was CBS.
Yeah, I think also
That's CBS. It's our next story, John. You just skipped a story for us.
All right. Well, so I set it up then.
We're going on. Yeah, CBS has seized the files from a terminated journalist who was investigating the whole Hunter Biden family businesses dealings.
Yeah, and the worst part, they not only did they fire her, they also would not give her back her confidential reporting materials.
Which
is extremely unusual. Most of the times you get these materials back.
Yeah. Well, they say they are just holding her office and secure.
Well, now they do. Now that's what they're saying.
They're saying that after they went.
That's only after a big up by the journalism union.
Yeah. Well, after they went in and copied it and turned it over to the FBI and CIA, of course.
Sure, that too.
It's secure. Yeah, the skullduggery that's going on, where you have the deep state basically deciding ahead of time who's going to win the election, and having lamestream media and legacy media in collusion with them, and suppressing. It's basically, as Trump, I hate to say he's right, it's banana republic time here. You got show trials going on. They're politically oriented. Every single thing that he's being accused of is going to get thrown out on the first appeal. That crazy judge in New York who decided that he was the expert on valuing his properties, not the independent people who made the loans. Nobody was hurt on the loans. The idea that Trump is running, is colluding to influence elections in Georgia being run by. Now, there's some idiots there.
John, we got like 20 seconds left. Richard, is there anything you want to end with?
This is no way an endorsement of Trump. He's a jerk anyway.
I don't like the guy. I don't want to vote for the guy. Don't think I'll vote for the guy. The other guy's an idiot as well. We need a new party.
Yeah, we need a lot of new things. All right. Thank you, John. Thank you, Richard, for being here. Thank you all for listening. Please remember to love everybody and have a good night.
Thank you so much.
Thanking you for watching the Libertarian Counterpoint each Thursday at 8 p.m. Channel 17 on Comcast, on YouTube, and on Facebook. We invite you to